Fractions! This is a review of part 5. In today's lesson, students will learn how to divide fractions by multiplying by the reciprocal. By doing what? Multiplying by the reciprocal. Very good. Before we begin, it's important to go over some math vocabulary. Let's go over the word reciprocal. Say reciprocal. Reciprocal. Clap it. Reciprocal. Okay, who's heard this word before? All of you have heard it, right? Okay, so what does reciprocal mean when you're talking about what's the reciprocal of a fraction? Well, a reciprocal is the multiplicative, which means you multiply. Okay, it's the multiplicative inverse of a fraction. Okay, multiplicative means what? It means multiply. And what about inverse? Inverse means what? It means opposite. It means what? Opposite. Okay, so we talk about a fraction. Okay, say fraction. Numerator top, denominator bottom. Say it again. Say fraction. Numerator top, denominator bottom. Good. If you're talking about the inverse or the opposite, that means that whatever is at the bottom of the fraction, the denominator now becomes the numerator, so it moves to the top. And whatever was at the top is going to move down to the bottom, so the numerator becomes the denominator. So that's why, to remember what reciprocal means, we say reciprocal. When the bottom becomes the top and the top becomes the bottom. Say it again. Say reciprocal. When the bottom becomes the top and the top becomes the bottom. So there's an interesting way that the reciprocal works. Let's say you have a fraction 3/4. What's the fraction? It's 3/4. Okay. If you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, something very interesting happens. Remember, it's the multiplicative inverse. It's the what? Multiplicative inverse. That means we're going to multiply by the inverse. The reciprocal is basically when you switch the places between 3 and 4. They switch places. So what's the reciprocal of 3/4? What is it? The reciprocal of 3/4 is, come on, what goes? When the bottom becomes the top and the top becomes the bottom. So the reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. Yes, do you see how they switched places? This is the reciprocal. Look at what happens when you multiply by the reciprocal. It's very interesting. Okay, my friends, look. You have 3 times 4 at the top, right? 3 times 4 is, what's 3 times 4? 3 times 4 is 12. Divided by 4 times 3. Well, 4 times 3 is also 12. Any number divided by itself is what? What is 12 over 12? What's 12 divided by 12? Anybody know? Come on. 12 divided by 12 is 1. Good job. So whenever you multiply by the reciprocal, you get 1. Now, if you were to try to solve this problem by cross-dividing, remember that? When you multiply fractions, you can cross-divide. Can you divide 4 divided by 4? Yes. The 4's will cross-cancel. This will be 1. Okay. What about the 3's? Did the 3's cross-cancel? Look across. Look across. Did they cross-cancel? Yes. They cross-cancel to 1. So again, it's showing you 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So when you multiply by the reciprocal, okay, the answer would be 1. Okay, just so you know. So let's review the 5 steps used to divide fractions. So you're going to write when, what are we doing? We're dividing fractions. Well, the first step is to rewrite the first fraction. Rewrite the first fraction. Okay. So let's do this step by step. Are you ready? Here we go. The example says 1/4, read it with me, 1/4 divided by 5/6. Great. So this is the first fraction and this is the second fraction, right? So the first step is to just rewrite the first fraction, which is 1/4. Yesterday, this was a whole number. Today, it's already a fraction. So that's good, right? Yes. The second step is to flip the second fraction. Okay, now flip is another word for what? When you flip something, what are you really talking about? Are you talking about the reciprocal? Yes, say reciprocal! When the bottom becomes the top and the top becomes the bottom. So when I say flip it, I'm actually saying, okay, what's the reciprocal of the second fraction? Okay, let's look. Let me make these 5, 6. Let me make the 5 in red, all right? So you can see that the numerator is 5 and the denominator is 6. If I say flip the second fraction, what is the second fraction going to be? What is it? When the bottom becomes the top and the top becomes the bottom, they're going to switch places. So the reciprocal is, what is it? Tell me. It is, yes, it is 6/5 or 6/5, okay? And it's okay that the 6 is bigger. This is just an improper fraction. Okay, now, since this is the reciprocal, remember, the reciprocal is the multiplicative inverse. So what do you have to do now? When you're dividing fractions, you're actually doing what? What do you have to change division into? What's the opposite of division? The opposite of division is multiplication. That's right. So you change this to multiplication, and then you follow the steps for multiplying out fractions. So you have to first multiply across the top, which is multiply the numerators. And after you multiply the numerators, what do? You can multiply across the bottom. What are the bottom numbers called? They're called the, what are they called? The denominators. Very good. Okay, the answer would be 1 times 6 is 6. And what about 4 times 5? It's 20. Okay, so 6/20. See, 6/20, could you simplify 6/20? Could you simplify it? Yes. 6 is an even number and so is 20. They're both even numbers. So if they're even numbers, what can you divide by? If they're even numbers, what could you divide by to simplify? You could divide by 2. Okay, let me show you an easier way. Okay, remember, when you multiply fractions, you can actually cross divide. Remember this? Some people are having problems with cross divide. Let me show you cross division. Look at the fraction. Okay, look at the fractions. You have 1/4 and 6/5. Well, let me go ahead and change the numbers into green to show you what you could cross multiply, or cross divide, sorry. So look at 4 and 6. Could you cross divide 4 and 6? You could divide by what? Divide by 2. And if you divide by 2 across, 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So if you rewrite the fractions as 1/2 times 3/5, what's your answer? Again, multiply the numerators. 1 times 3 is 3. And multiply the denominators. What's 2 times 5? 2 times 5 is 10. Now, simplified, the answer is 3/10. If you divided 6 and 20 by 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Go ahead and get that down. Okay, so you're going to read and write the first example with me. It says 1/9 divided by 1/3. Okay, so if we want to divide fractions, the first step that we do is we rewrite the first fraction. What's the first fraction? It is 1/9. Okay, then we're going to take the second fraction, and we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, or we're going to flip the second fraction. How would you What is the reciprocal of 1/3? How would you flip this? When the bottom becomes the top and the top becomes the bottom, what do? What is the reciprocal of 1/3? Come on, people, it's 3/1. That is correct. It is 3/1. Very nice. The next step says to change division into multiplication. Now, when you multiply, okay, across, let me go ahead and show you. 1 times 3 is 3. 9 times 1 is any number times 1 is that number multiplied by 1, right? So 1 times 3 is 3, and 9 times 1 is 9. So you get 3/9. Okay? A lot of you at this point, to simplify, you already know how you could simplify, right? Could you divide both the numerator and the denominator by, what would you divide by here? You would divide by 3, right? At this point, you can divide the top and bottom number by 3. 3/3, okay? And 3 divided by 3 is 1. What's 9 divided by 3? It's, what is it? 3. So your answer is 1/3. Would you like me to show you another way that you could get 1/3? Well, that's actually called cross divide. So let's cross divide. Now, we're only going to write this once. So I'm going to write 1/9 times 3/1. I'm going to show you what you can cross divide here, okay? You see how this is 3/9? You see that already? Okay. So you could again divide by 3. Watch me now. Watch me now. What is 3 divided by 3? 3 divided by 3 is 1, right? So this is 1. What is 9 divided by 3? 9 divided by 3 is 3. Very nice. So now let's multiply these numbers across. 1 times 1 is 1. What about 3 times 1? 3 times 1 is 3. So we're going to get 1/3 both ways. This, in my opinion, is an easier way if you can see that you can cross divide by 3. Okay, read and write example 2 with me. Read it. It says 1/2 divided by 3/4. Okay, great. So if we're going to divide fractions, we follow these 3 steps. First, we do what? We rewrite the first fraction. So you rewrite it as 1/2. Okay, great. Then you're going to flip the second fraction, or you're going to take the reciprocal. What's the reciprocal of 3/4? Flip it. Reciprocal of 3/4? Okay, I guess you're going to have to say it. Say reciprocal when the bottom becomes the top and the top becomes the bottom. Okay, so if you flip it, it becomes what? Tell me. It becomes 4/3. Thank you very much. Good job. And you have to change the division into multiplication. Okay, it's the multiplicative inverse. Okay, good. Okay. Now, if you want to go ahead and multiply out these fractions, you can. What's 1 times 4? 1 times 4 is 4. Very good. And what about 2 times 3? You all know 2 times 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Now, you get 4/6 over here. You see it? You get 4/6. Now, if you want to simplify 4/6, how would you do it? Remember, simplify means divide. What would you divide by here? 4/6. They're both even numbers, right? If they're both even numbers, you could divide by, tell me. Divide by what? Oh, divide by 2? Oh, you're very right. So if you want to simplify this, and you divided the numerator and the denominator by 2, your new fraction would be what? What's 4 divided by 2? 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So simplified, it's 2/3. Let me show you how to get 2/3 by cross dividing. So when you cross divide, you're going to rewrite it as 1/2. Again, multiplied by 4/3. And I know I'm telling you to divide when you see a multiplication sign, okay? I know that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's because they share Okay, this is really 1 times 4, and this is really 2 times 3. So when you have a numerator on top of a denominator, you can always simplify by dividing, even when you think you're multiplying. All right, so look at the 2 and the 4. 2 and the 4, 2 and the 4. What could you divide by? What could you divide by? How could you cross simplify? Could you divide by 2? Yes, you can. So what is 2 divided by 2? 2 divided by 2 is 1. And what about 4 divided by 2? 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay? I'm going to erase this real quick so you can see. Okay, here we go. So let's see if we get 2/3. Here we go. Look at 1 times 2. What's 1 times 2? 1 times 2 is, it's 2. Very good. What about 1 times 3? 1 times 3 is 3. So again, your answer is 2/3, however you want to do it. You can simplify, which is divide by 2, the top and the bottom number, or you could actually cross divide by 2.